Well, welcome back to Trevette Knots, folks. I'm John. This is Addison. We're sitting back here on the deck enjoying the evening as the sun is setting, but slowly. There's daylight savings time permanently now, apparently. So this is the next episode of We're Not Talking, featuring a conversation with Matt Beaudoin. Matt and his wife Jill own a company called Knotwork in Mystic, Connecticut. They have a couple of retail stores, and he has a family legacy in knot tying, starting actually a couple of generations before his grandfather. But his grandfather was a knot tyer of note by the name of Alton Beaudoin. And we're going to talk about Matt's business and his granddad and whatever else comes up. I hope you enjoy it. Well, hey, Matt, how you doing today?
Hey, John, pretty good. How are you?
Good. It's it has been. I guess I might describe in my introduction that we had some challenges making this happen, technical challenges.
Just a
But
little audio.
so busy week.
Busy week. 20 wholesale orders came in yesterday or Monday. And today's one of my work from home days. And I have a teenager who's upset that one of my other employees told her to work. She's treating me like a slave. Like,
Yeah.
I have to do this. I have to cut string and tie customs for people and run their cash register. Okay, well, what's Cynthia doing? She's tying stuff for Amy. What's Gabby doing? She's tying stuff for Amy. What's Amy doing? She's packing the orders to go out. I said, so who isn't working? Well, they're all working. Then you're all doing it. She's not treating you like a slave. She's just trying to get her work done and telling you what needs to get done.
Trying to be efficient.
Yeah.
So tell me about the golden rose knot.
So we're talking about documentation, and you saw what I was doing when I was sharing my grandfather's pictures. There's only 6 or 7 pictures in time that were extant to when he did the work.
Yeah.
Like the 1957 craft show picture where you see there's actually no sailor bracelets in it. But what got particular was when Lindsay made his book, The Decorative Knot Book. I had him sign 2 copies, one for my dad and my uncle. And my uncle kind of got a little annoyed because he says, that's not a golden rose knot, and Grandpa had nothing to do with making it. I said, what do you mean? He said, it's a Swedish rose knot. I said, what's a Swedish rose knot? The Guild of Knot Tyers, Lindsay spent about 5 years trying to research and found no references to this compound knot. He says, well, back when Grandpa was working for the Moore McCormick line, he was in Panama, and he was sitting on a bench waiting for the locks and waiting for things to go, and the Swedish sea captain was sitting next to him and showed him how to tie this rose knot. So it's a Swedish rose knot. It's not a golden rose knot. And so, well, how are we supposed to know that?
Yeah.
So, it's old school. It's like my grandfather's knot tying skill predates Ashley by well over 10 years.
Yeah.
And, before we had real serious reference books, the Bushby knot book was in the mist somewhere at the time.
Right.
We only had Ashley come out, 47. And, my family history of knot tying goes back into the 1820s through generations of family.
Now it's 1820, so that would have been what,
my
great granddad?
My dad's Tom, my grandfather's Alton, my great grandfather Alton, his father is Pierre, and his father was also involved, who I don't know the name of, but he taught my great great grandfather.
Okay.
but that was mostly maritime trades on Lake Champlain on the French Canadian side, and also a little bit on the New York side.
Mm-hmm.
Because my great grandfather Samuel was actually born between two ports on the U.S. side, which is how they got the citizenship. His fully expectant mother was helping run a tugboat.
Really?
And so,
So when you were a kid, I mean, y'all lived nearby or lived close to each other, didn't you?
oh yeah, my mom's side of the family, this is home. You know, we 13 generations ago we founded the town. My dad's family moved in from upstate New York via Ohio, and I grew up 5 miles from my grandparents' house,
Okay.
and my cousins lived between the two houses. So I have a very large family within very close proximity. And
Mm-hmm.
specific to knot tying, there were about 12 of us within a 10-mile radius that were all working in the family, helping him out.
All within the realms of Mystic.
Well, you know, the towns aren't that big, so Mystic, Stonington, Westerly, Groton, they're the,
Yeah.
you know, Mystic itself is one of those places that quote unquote doesn't exist. It's a village that straddles two towns.
Okay.
So the drawbridge, which is our 100th anniversary this year, that river splits the Groton side from the Stonington side,
Okay.
with kind of, when you get into the internal politics, very different personalities, and we saw that in full display in the last couple of years
Really?
with everything we're doing for safety, and the two towns had different approaches on the same street, one door apart.
Perfect.
So, and both towns did equally well, so we can't even argue who did better.
Yeah.
So,
Well, so I want to talk some about your business and more about your granddad too, because I mean it's all intertwined. But there are a lot of people that know Mystic Knotwork from what you've done, and you know, in a variety of capacities. Like we were talking about Mabel Marble having a friend who came to town, and
yeah, cool.
and I think she sent you something, and then you sent her something back.
So Mabel Marble gave us, or Mabel Marble sent us a little tiny, like a fender, like a cork fender, really, really intricate Turk's head on it, nicely done. And in trade, because you can't get, you know, pre-dyed cord easily,
Yeah.
I gave her about a 3 pound hank of turquoise. That was her favorite color.
Awesome.
And I see that showing up on her Instagram all the time, so it's fun to see, because that lady is amazing. She's, you know, a fan of the art. She's talented. She's approachable. She really is, you know,
Mm-hmm.
the inspiration for a lot of people to get interested and started.
Absolutely. When you know, before I'd ever, I think, interacted with her at all online, her name came up when Miko did a particular knot, and he said, "I got this from Mabel," when he was doing a tutorial. This was a
Yep.
couple of years ago, and I was like, "Who's Mabel?" And then I looked around, found Mabel Marble. Then I found that she had a website. I mean, excuse me,
Mm-hmm.
she had a YouTube channel, and with a lot of good stuff on it.
Yep.
And I mean, she's like the Turk's Head lady. So
Yeah.
if I need to reference something, I will usually go try to look it up on there. What are you trying to think of?
The guy who wrote the Turk's Head cookbook.
Oh, Don
Don Burris.
Don Burris. Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, she kind of has picked up the spirit of what Don Burris was doing. Was he teaching us all how to tie the fancy ones through his, especially the cookbook #2.
Uh-huh.
So that's she's done amazing that way. And then of course, you know, we're in that new age of the new dawn of knot tires, where we're all you know, you guys more than me, but shooting tutorials at each other and really advancing the art way past what it ever was when, you know, my grandfather was on the bench learning from the sailing captain from Sweden. So
Yeah.
there's things. Like I think I've mentioned to you in the past that you know, most everything I've ever learned tying knots I learned before I was 15.
Yeah.
So a lot of times when I'm referencing the books, I'm reminding myself of what I was taught by hand, face to face, looking at somebody working in the mirror. So my grandfather would be right next to me or across from me, showing me how to move rope around.
Mm-hmm.
And the single strand star knot is, I pick it up and try it every few years because I have a little bit of downtime, and it's the most frustrating thing in the world. Where I see, Jason there for the bosun's,
Jason
Linnet.
Lennon. Yeah.
Yeah, he knocks him out. He knocks him out like I'm knocking out Turk's heads.
Yeah.
And it's like there's not in any of the books that I got from my grandfather. It's like this is a knot that he must never have shown me and never had a reference to. But I would, if I had the time to really dig in, I'd be calling Jason. It's like, how are you doing this? Even though he has tutorial videos.
Yeah.
My brain, as much as it can do this stuff, has trouble working in 3 dimensions and seeing how something projects in through a project and out another direction.
Yeah.
Which is kind of how the star knot operates. And I can do a multi-strand star knot. Those are fairly straightforward.
They're easy.
Just mirror duplication.
Yeah.
And you can cheat and just drill a hole in a piece of wood and pin it in place as you go, and work the ends through the middle, just so you can see exactly what you're working on. But the one strand has just got me buffaloed, so I can understand purely why somebody would ask for a follow-up how to.
By the way, I don't bring this up during the course of the conversation. Matt does to some extent, but you will notice that the entire time that Matt and I are having a conversation, he's tying Turk's head bracelets. Unlike anyone else, man, it's crazy. It's what he does. He ties Turk's head bracelets like all the time. He actually holds a record, as far as we know, for tying a 3-lead, 11-bite, 3-pass Turk's head bracelet in 87 seconds. Kind of crazy. When I learned to do that, I think I'd bought some line from Dan Noel, Nautical USA.
Oh yeah.
And he just sent me one, a little one tied in 120 in 4.5 millimeter cotton. And I was like, that is so cool. And I think I hit him up and I said, how'd you learn to do this? And he said, I can't remember what his answer was, but somehow I ended up going to a YouTube video and I didn't get it. And then I went to another one and another one. I think I went to, it was at least 5 videos on that specific knot, all being tied in paracord, before I finally found one guy that said, after you get the loops done, you start back here and follow that one and keep to the outside of it. And I was like, okay, thank you for saying that, because now I understand, because that's all it is. It's like doing a Turk's head. Once you find that you've not tied, then you can just follow around. And it's a little noodly. If you do it with hard laid line, it's not nearly as hard. But it's like anything. If you do it all the time, easy. If you don't.
Yeah, it's like these things. I'm teaching a Turk's head. I teach it like this.
Yep.
Come across, and then I bring this point across here, up and around. So now I'm always working from the right hand side.
Yep.
So everything happens inside my fingertips.
Yep.
So it's all just a smooth motion. But that one motion is hard to teach in video, hard to teach in text, especially. So I did a little how-to booklet and a little how-to video.
I've seen that.
The
do you have all your people doing it the same way you do it?
There's one person doing it the way that Hoyle would teach you. It's so the 2 ways to do it. The way I show you go around and around.
Yeah.
You take that piece around. The way that everybody else does it is they start here, and then behind their wrist, they go left over right.
Yep.
Come across, come back, and you can see how your wrist angles get weird.
Pull it up. I can't see.
I'm sorry, but you see how your wrist angles get weird. You work this way.
Yeah.
You try tying 200 of those a day, your arm is going to fall off.
Mm-hmm.
But the way I'm working it is I'm working in that natural triangle inside the, for RSI issues.
Yeah.
So my way is technically a little slower than working back from the left. There's one move that you don't normally see.
Yeah.
But because I'm working in a natural position, my endurance is much better.
Mm-hmm. Well, how many of those are you guys tying a day?
A day, that's hard to rate. I think we shipped out 4,000 today.
Really?
So that represents work over the winter too. And it's
Okay.
not just today. We have one wholesale loader right now that's 36 4-packs of brown, 36 4-packs of orange, 72 4-packs of navy, and 72 4-packs of white.
So
And
that's a
that's just coasters.
that's a
That's one of
that's
the
a
20
good
orders
little
we got this
business
week.
right there. And you couldn't do it if your people tied it faster than anybody in China can.
I would bet there's people in China faster than me. There's
Really?
a different level of motivation over there.
Yeah, yeah, well, there's
Yeah,
that. Well,
that's
it's
all.
funny because before I saw your videos
Yeah,
and saw how you did this, I was like, I just had thought it out because I'd never done it. I was like, well, you'd have to tie it on your wrist. And then I was like, there's no way, that's not what's happening with Mystic. And so then I think you did one standing next to your boat. There's some
I think
video you
I was leaning against. I was at my grandmother's dock.
leaning
I think.
against, yeah, on the pier,
Yeah,
and you tied it, and then I can't remember if it was that one or another one where you just slip it over your hand, and then you said, yeah, well, you can just do this, and that'll sort of, splay it out a little bit. But
yeah. And then when it gets wet, it shrinks.
my thought was, then your wife did the video where she answers 5 questions as the most commonly, frequently asked questions. How do
Yeah,
you clean it? Because I mean, you put it on, you could take it off. Well, no, not once it's wet. Even
right,
in cotton, it's going to shrink some. This is flax, which shrinks
right.
way more than cotton. And so
Yeah,
there's no getting it off unless you cut it off or untie it. Because I don't glue them. I just have it, it's tucked under, but it doesn't come
yeah.
apart.
Oh, that's my single biggest pet peeve. Oh my God.
What?
Turk's head bracelets. How do you finish? How do you finish them with glue? You don't finish them in the traditional way. Traditionally, they would splice them together. It's like no.
I don't
Traditionally, with
glue it.
Turk's
No,
head,
I'm just, see this? It's just tucked in.
yeah,
It doesn't come
yeah.
apart. It's
Well,
a Turk's head.
traditionally, the Turk's head was your railing grip knots, and that's what we're most closely simulating.
Yeah.
Where you make it out of flax or hemp or something that doesn't that shrinks like a son of a gun. So you put it on, you cinch it up tight, you hit it with some boiling water or really hot water or oils or something, and
Mm-hmm.
then it becomes part of your bright work of the boat. So and then at the end you have them underneath, you cut them close. So when you cinches it in, you don't finish the inside of a Turk's head bracelet, Turk's head
Mm-mm.
on a rail, because the pressure holds it all together.
That's right.
So when we do the little tap of glue, it just holds those ends in as though it was crushed against your wrist. So we try to do it in a way you can't really notice it much. But the fact is, this cross splicing and stuff that people claim is traditional, there's no examples of that being done
Mm-mm.
before the late 80s when people were trying to be fancy about things, which is
Yeah.
cool. It's showing off. It's a
Yeah.
skill. Put it on the outside, show you can splice small line. God help you.
Yeah.
It's a great thing.
Yeah.
Don't have don't be illusion to think that's how the sailors are splicing the Turk's heads on rails and stuff.
Yeah.
It just wasn't necessary. But my grandfather, he used to use white glue
Use what?
and white glue.
Okay. Yeah.
Pick up common white glue on wax paper and just kind of tip the ends, let it hang out and dry like
Yeah.
like drying pasta, and then we tie the strings off of that. You tie it, and then he white glue and clamp and actually clothespins, and let it sit for a few hours. Well, you wear that bracelet, 3rd, 4th time you've taken a shower, that white glue is basically gone.
Yeah.
But the rope is shrunk and it's locked itself in, and it's not going anywhere anyway.
Uh-huh.
So we went to hot glue as our approach, just because it's a little more resilient. And even so, 2 years on, one of my bracelets had lost one of its tips of hot glue, but it hadn't moved.
I just use a little bit of super glue to keep the ends from fraying. That's it.
Yep, that's a Vince Brennan trick.
That's all I do.
Yep, Vince Brennan will make basically sewing needles on the end of his small stuff,
Yeah.
and he's doing Beckett's and
Mhm.
and bell ropes and stuff. So
Tell me about Martha Stewart. You've got some association with Martha Stewart Living, don't you?
Martha Stewart took our business from the mom and pop, the pop, I guess. I had just basically left my job in IT, and we're doing okay. I replaced basically replaced my income almost, but I didn't need the income I had. Um, and we did a wedding. How do you want to start this? It's weird. Anyway, so we had a little website going, and we were doing our thing. And I got a phone call. I got an order. I got an order for a wedding from from Liz. And she called me Thursday before the wedding. We came up a couple not short. She had more RSVPs. So without spending money, without her paying for them, I shipped them to the wedding venue, and they're waiting there. And we figured we'd catch up on Monday, and everything settled out. It worked out fine. Unbeknownst to me, she was Elizabeth Graves, who was the executive director of Martha Stewart Weddings.
Nice.
So we got some serious conversations about us happening way outside of my purview, and I got a call in August of that year saying, it was the weirdest phone call. It started with, "Hi, this is Hannah from Martha Stewart. I'm just gonna let you know you can't win."
I'm gonna what?
"I'm just gonna let you know you can't win." I said, "That's an interesting comment." She says, "We're starting an American Made Awards. In order to get things rolling, we need some entries just to fill in the space so people will start entering. So if you can send me 3 or 4 pictures, well, our editorial team will write your application, write your submission. We'll use your submission for publication and for attention to get our contest rolling. But again, you can't win because we're entering you." I said, "So you're gonna promote my little business through Martha Stewart, and the only thing I don't get out of it is a chance to win a couple $100?" And she says, "I guess that's one way to look at it. But we'll invite you to the awards dinner at Grand Central Station and this and this." It's like, I don't see why I would ever say no to this.
Yeah.
So I sent her the pictures. They ended up inviting us there. We met some incredible people at the event. One of them, which was complete happenstance, was the marketing director for Coca-Cola Company, who happened to be just walking through Grand Central, saw my stuff and said, "Do you make these?" It's like, "Yeah." Your logo, your tags look too professional, look too clean. They look like imports. You got to make your logo simpler. You got to do this and this, otherwise people won't believe you're real.
Interesting.
And it was this little random marketing thing from some random
Just
guy
a
walking
perspective
through.
of a guy who said,
And I found out that every Coca-Cola sheet, when they print the cans,
yeah,
they intentionally damage every plate.
really?
So every single Coca-Cola can on the market has a scratch on it somewhere.
Huh.
And you may not even notice it, but it helps to give the brand its sense of authenticity.
Boy, that's an interesting take. It really is.
So there's little things.
Because I've gone to great pains, as you see, to get a very professional looking logo. I mean, even my son-in-law, I designed it, he drew it.
Well, that professional logo, though, bluntly and kind of rudely, doesn't mean anything to the average tourist.
No.
So even though it's a very, very precisely tied knot, very beautifully oriented, it doesn't look as generically. Mine at the time was actually a picture of the Jolly Rover from Key West, and I imaged it up, and all my colors and fonts matched the sail color, and it was just all. I had blacked out the Jolly Rover, so I didn't take away his branding.
Yeah.
But it looked exactly like you would see any other generic company put a logo together. So yours is peculiar to you. It doesn't have any generic nature to it at all. Even though it's precise, it's not marketing world perfection.
No, but it is what it is, and I'm sticking with it. I've had a couple people try to get me to change it into a more maybe usable for imprint type format. I don't care. I just don't. I mean, I'm aiming really at what I do as artwork to be sold to a handful of people for the money that I want.
Right.
That's really what my goal is.
What was funny was Dan from Nautical USA was at my shop before Nautical USA was a thing.
Yeah.
And to ask me permission if he could make a logo similar to mine.
Oh, really?
Well, yeah. So, it's not going to be the same knot. I can't remember what he used. He used the rose knot too, didn't he?
He's using the star knot.
Star knot.
Yeah.
It's like, I have no copyrights over a Turk's Head knot.
No.
Mine is that logo I have is actually a photograph originally of one of my trivets, of one of my flat Turk's heads,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I had somebody clean it up and take out all the detail. But
Yeah.
it's still, if you look at it really carefully, you'll see that some of the bends aren't exactly the same as the other ones.
Yeah. Well, this is from a picture
Yep.
of one of the it's basically it's 894 base and then with crown in the middle of it.
Okay.
Um and it was a picture of a knot that was on one of my frames. And I took a picture of it, sent it to my son-in-law, and I said, I want to say Trevet knots on the top, anchors on the side, nautical knot creations on the bottom. Boom,
Yep.
do it. He did. I gave him
It
$100.
looks great. There you go.
So
Random factoid: the Yahoo Yodel, the Yodel, I got paid $700 for that.
really?
Yep.
Well, that's how it goes sometimes, right? I think the lady that invented the green bean casserole for Betty Crocker or somebody got whatever she got paid with, hourly wage.
Oh, geez.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, really?
$10 for the day's work at that time in history.
Probably. Yeah. If that. Yeah, it's sometime in the 1930s or 40s, maybe.
Oh boy, yeah.
So, so your granddad, how much notoriety did he have for what he was doing during his lifetime?
My granddad was interesting. He Smithsonian Institute, a lot of the curators and people would come up to his shop. He had a few patrons out of New York City who come. One guy whose name slips my mind, I only met him actually during 2020 on a phone call, would come into my grandfather's shop once a year and basically buy him out because he wanted to make sure my grandfather never quit doing what he was doing.
What now? He wanted to quit doing what he was doing?
He did not want him to quit.
Oh, did not. Okay.
So anything this guy noticed had been there for a while, he'd just buy it. So every year he'd come in and
to make sure that he had the motivation to keep going. Gotcha. Yeah.
And I didn't know about that until 2020. I knew my grandfather had customers, but I actually have a letter from Jeff Budsworth asking him to join the Guild of Knot Tires back in '87.
Yeah.
Of course, my grandfather's response was, "What the heck's wrong with these people? I don't have time to teach people around me, not to teach the whole damn world. International's a big place. I'm not going to deal with any of this stuff." So in the guild world, he has good notoriety. When I went to New Bedford for my first Guild of Knot Tires meeting, everybody was pronouncing my name right, and that really messed with my head. Because nobody can pronounce Beaudoin right.
I
Especially
couldn't.
My grandfather pronounced it.
I had tried a number of different ways to try to figure it out because I do care when your name is spelled like that.
Yep.
You normally get Trevet, so that's it's one or the other, but Trevet. So I always give it the old college try to get the name right.
Right.
Beaudoin was not one that I came up with.
Nope.
I was
Should be
thinking
Beaudoin.
Beaudoin or a bunch of different variations.
Well, Beaudoin is usually the Americanized, and Beaudoin would be the French Canadian.
Okay.
But my grandfather has Beaudoin, so that's only like the only family I know that pronounces it that way. But his notoriety was not internet high, but he got written up in naval newsletters, EB, the General Dynamics newsletter, a couple times, local newspapers. He had an article written about him in Yankee magazine in '67, the February issue. His How to Tie a Turk's Head was published in Cruising World magazine in 1980. There's a decent amount of stuff out there from him by him, but it's a rarefied atmosphere in the pre-internet days for knot tying.
Yeah. So I mean, to have been known as well as he was, he had to be some type of a self-promoter.
He was a grumpy old SOB. He was not the kind of he was your quintessential sailor. He was your quintessential. I know what I do. I do it well. If you want it, it's here. If you don't, there's a door. And my grandmother was more of a promoter, but it's like Mystic Knotwork. I didn't do a whole lot of self promotion. to get things to roll. You know, the whole Martha Stewart thing took off because I did the right thing for some stranger I didn't know who she was.
Mm-hmm.
I picked up hundred $150,000 or so far in sales by giving away a water bottle I stole from the green room. You know, it's not you know, it's just being there doing the right thing, and it's weird, and people like weird.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
Well, that's true.
18
It is
months
different.
after we opened to the public, Portlandia suddenly came out with a knot shop.
Yeah.
Has a knot shop skit, and
Yeah.
I was talking to a producer on New York City who was in our shop, and he says you'll never hear a response from them because they cannot give you credit for it. But since you're the only knot shop in the world, especially then, they couldn't have gotten the idea any other way.
Yeah. You think, right? I
They
mean,
probably heard of us and didn't look at us, so they couldn't copy us.
yeah.
But the idea created this whole interesting, crazy scene. I don't know if you've seen the
Absolutely
skit,
hilarious. Absolutely
but
hilarious.
the skit has nothing to do with our shop,
Oh
but the concept's there.
yeah. But I love it. Yeah, it was wonderful.
I can hear your parrot whistle, wolf whistle in the background.
Yeah. Yeah. But he's at a good distance now, so it doesn't completely blow my audio up.
Yeah, he sounds good in this. Last time I heard him on the speakers, it sounded like a dog barking almost.
Yeah. As I listened to the recording, and it was pretty awful. It didn't even sound like the bird. It was just
Right.
beep, some sort
Exactly.
of a weird interruption, like there was something wrong. And the only thing that was wrong was that he decided to chime in.
Yep.
Yeah. So let me think.
But you've seen it. How much self-promotion do you do for your business?
Well,
You're not
yeah,
telling.
dude, the whole, well, none. All
Right.
I did was I joined Miko's Facebook group, and one day, a couple months in, maybe a month or two in, Daryl Inskeep posted a picture of a frame that he'd made that was, a little frame, and but it was a high res picture. And
Yep.
I think I'd seen snippets of your granddad's stuff. I didn't have a Grammont and Hensel, so I hadn't seen any of that.
Yep.
And I think maybe I'd seen something on, not Instagram, on Pinterest. That was a picture of a corner of one of Jesse Eves' frames.
Okay.
I remember just seeing it because it would jump out in my eye. It would catch my eye. But anyway, it was the first time I'd seen a picture of one where it was high res and I could zoom in and go, oh, I know what that is, or I don't know what that is, but I can figure it out. And I just immediately, right there, as I was looking at it, decided to make one. And so I just hauled off and did it. And I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't, literally, the only thing that I knew how to tie on that first frame was the Turk's heads that I used in the
Sure.
4 pieces. That's it. And then I posted pictures of that on the Facebook group, on Ropeworks group, and to much acclaim. And everybody said, hey, show us how you did it, because there's no instructions anywhere really.
Right.
I was like, all right, so I'm going to make another one. I decided that this is what I wanted to do, virtually instantaneously. So I made one video, posted that on the group, and Mac McKenzie down in Australia said, no, John, YouTube, so we can keep track of it. And I was like, all right, I'll figure that out then.
Yep.
And then I just did the YouTube channel, and I posted a video a week for over a year.
Nice.
And because of that, Skip took notice. Skip and I became friends, and it's kind of gone from there. I haven't made any great efforts to promote it, except just trying to share what I do, because what I do is odd, and just me and Skip were kind of doing it. That was about it. Still that way.
Yeah. And what I do is so base and so basic. It's the scale of the beast that's the difference. And if you get me into talking about not tying business, you're going to hear things about project management and task flow, and and dealing with lead times, and finding out that something as stupid as Navy dyed cotton went off the market for almost 18 months straight because the primary yarn supplier for Gildan T-shirt company closed.
Really?
And every bit of navy blue dyed cotton cord went off the market. Gildan was buying it all as fast as it could be made.
Wow.
So we had a drought. We had a huge drought of navy blue fiber.
Uh-huh.
And I've got 10,000 pounds of cotton cord in reserve
Yeah.
right now.
Yeah.
And I made it through all of 2020 and most of 2021 without having to buy to refill that reserve.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and
So
you do a large volume business, in what you do and the specific things that you do, you've got to have those materials to be able to move
yeah,
forward. Yeah.
there's 22 of us tying knots.
Yeah.
Actually, 21 of us tying knots. I have one employee who, in her job description, she's actually not allowed to tie anything.
She's not allowed to.
She's not allowed to. I don't want her
Does she know
getting
how?
started. No, which
Okay.
makes it interesting because I have a book in production and at press right now, and that book she's the one who was my copy editor, and I had an artist hand draw all the pictures of the knots. So it's kind of a throwback, old school 1970s era basic knot book. It's really, there's nobody in the guild who needs this book.
Okay.
Okay, there was a book that I was selling for $12 or $13 a piece that somebody else had written that they took out of wholesale sales.
Yeah.
So because I sold like 3,000 copies of it in my store, and it was really a bad book. I took the cover size and did everything else. Read the whole thing. It took 2.5 years. And I don't know how Des Pawson writes a book like he writes a book, because it's probably, if it's 1,000 words in the entire book, I'd be shocked by close to
Right.
250 or 500.
Really?
But it took 2.5 years between artists and try to convince an artist how to draw. There's back splice, there's short splice, there's eye splice, there's Turk's head, there's monkey fist. But there's also a simple overhand, figure 8 knot, all hand drawn.
Yeah.
And the drawing and the tracing would be wrong. Like she had a splice, and instead of going over one and under, or actually under one and out, she went over 2 and out. It's like, you got to catch that before it gets done. And it was really funny. It's like I was splicing manila rope to yellow polypropylene so she could see the color contrast to know which spaces were which.
So it was obvious, right?
Yeah. And it was just the process. Obviously it wasn't 2.5 years of all, it was, 5 or 6 hours and waiting 2 months for the art to come back. And then it was 3 or 4 hours and getting the text right. And then finding out that we missed a letter. We capitalized this wrong thing. Is constant edit it while we're running a full business.
Sheesh.
But it was a fun process.
Wow.
But it's a real basic book. It
Yeah.
is fold it in half, stick it in your back pocket kind of book. It's not.
Okay.
It's smaller than Knotting Matters.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, I'm still, Ashley's is what I go to for almost everything and anything, whether it's just ideas or how to do.
Sure.
However, globe knots, that kind of thing, I want to see somebody do it. I need to watch them do it. It's hard to see that into 2 dimensions and really understand it with all the overs and unders, because it's 3-dimensional.
Well, if Don Burris, I wish his stuff was available still.
Yeah.
His globe knot cookbook. If you have his jig, it ties up just like you would tie a Turk's head in the round.
It's like a mandrel.
It's a tube. It's a tube.
Yeah.
And each holes in a tube are all lettered A through J, whatever the letters are, and they go around 1 through whatever. And he'll say go from 1A to 2B to 3J and you do it all together. And then as you're pulling it off the top, you drop your core in, and you kind of cinch it up like you would a Turk's head, and it actually forms into a multifaceted monkey fist.
You know what I've got? I have a grocery bag, an old paper grocery bag, full of those that Skip made. I think some of them came from Jerry Maskey.
Oh,
I think Jerry Maskey gave them to me. I just haven't messed with them. I mean, I'm not doing globe knots, at least not right now, on as ends on fancy work for my frames, but at some point I will get to it. But I already have the mandrels.
Yeah, I tried reaching out to Don to try to get his books and his books back in publication. I'll put the bill for it. I think he put such a huge amount of effort. He was a godsend to a whole era of knot tires, and I don't want to see his effort, sit on the sidelines because he's having trouble finding time to make the tools.
Yeah.
The tools themselves are low-level hobbyist machinist tools.
Yeah.
but the intellectual knowledge in those books is priceless.
That's what everyone says. You know, I haven't put my eyes on him personally. I do not
Yep.
know. I know that Skip has a full copy of his books.
Yeah,
Um,
I have three of his books. I have
yeah.
Turk's Head, Advanced Turk's Head, and Globe Knot,
Mm-hmm.
and a whole bunch of jigs. He actually made me about 20 jigs at one point,
Yeah,
just because
really.
I want to support him and his efforts,
Yeah.
because he's I know he's working on different things and not playing anymore, but he's a treasure. He's a valuable resource to
Yeah.
the community, and I
Well,
want to
you
make
won't
sure
ever
I
hear
support
anybody
that.
argue with that. I mean, that's all you hear is nothing but great things about Don Burris
Yeah.
and everything that he did. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Well, let's talk more about your granddad. Let's go.
all right.
Let's digress and go back to talking about Alton. Um, Obviously, he was a sailor.
Sailor in the sense of merchant mariner, not in the sense of navy or regatta. He was a merchant
Right. Right.
mariner.
Yeah. Um,
So,
so merchant sailor, and then at some point he made that the Seamen's Institute frame, or he made a frame for the Seamen's Institute for a year's board or something.
um, so
Is that
there's
right?
there's two stories. There's the truth and there's the story. The truth is that, like, according to my uncle, he made a relatively decent, not a fancy frame, kind of like a Skip Hip story,
Yeah. Yeah.
where he made a decent frame, and he was staying in the Bowery at the time, and his what do you call it, landlady traded him his board and trade for the frame. Instead of paying
Really?
for board, he got to give up the picture frame instead, because she was so happy with it.
Huh.
The incorrect story, or the one my grandfather told all of his grandkids, was that he used it to pay a bar tab, which is what got published in Martha Stewart Living and got me in trouble with my family, because that's not the truth.
Because
That's
they
not,
knew it wasn't true. Yeah.
because well, my mother is obviously my mother, who married into the family. My sister, my brother, and two cousins all knew the bar tab story.
Okay.
My dad remembers the bar tab story, but also thinks it was made up, and my uncle Jim knows it was made up.
Okay.
So it wasn't until it got publication I caught hell for it, and that's when I found out it was a BS story. So my grandfather would just, everything has a seed of truth. He sold his first picture frame in New York City, but it wasn't to pay the bar tab. It was to pay. It was his landlady offering him a trade for his board.
For how long?
I don't know. I'm going to guess a month, just to guess.
Yeah.
Could have been 2 weeks, because he was still working the Moore McCormick line. So they would, ship from Rio de Janeiro up to New York Harbor. He'd stay stateside until they can unload and get ready to return voyage. So he
Okay.
didn't really have a permanent home in New York City. He basically lived on the boat, but he would take shore time. And a lot of times, most of the time, he stayed according to family stories, my grandfather's stories. He Oh, by the way, I've tied a couple of these while we're sitting here. But he's
Being productive. Being productive.
according to
Good.
the family lore. Um, where was I? He spent most of his time at Seaman Trust Institute, and he stayed stateside because he didn't want to pay the bills to stay outside of that. So a lot of what he learned was the old retired sailors from, figure this was the 30s, so from the
When
teens
was he
and
born?
20s. 13.
1913.
1913.
Okay. So generationally, that's like my granddad, because I'm a lot older than you are, was born in 1895. My dad was born in 1922. So right in between there.
Yep.
Yeah. So let's see, 13, 23, 33. So
So he's in his 20s and
right
30s.
smack dab in the middle of the Depression, he was a
Yep.
merchant seaman. Yeah.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. That was a weird time because both my parents grew up during that time, were in their
Yeah.
teens and so forth. And he was a little older, but an odd time, a long term where people were unemployed and businesses were going, down and out forever and so on.
Right. But he was, he says he was delivering coal, and that's something you just can't really do without. So he
Yep.
kept himself going.
Yep.
Even today, my son-in-law is a merchant mariner. He works oil rigs in the Gulf as a
Mm-hmm.
ship pilot, and he's he's not hurting for work. He's
Yeah.
been on contract for years. So even with the economic stuff going on nowadays, it's like it's just screaming for stuff.
When did he first start doing something that would have been considered a shop or a business with knotting?
See, we're in the before times, and zoning didn't really play into things. So, sometime I would say somewhere in the 50s, definitely.
Okay.
He was using his the front of his first story of his house as a walk-in shop. It was right across from the local Greasy Spoon on the way to the Mystic Seaport, so it was a stopover point anyway. So people would come off the roads, um, and they would come into the seaport if they wanted to grab a bite before they went in, and then they're in the parking lot across the street from his house. Um, when I was a kid, he rented out the top 2 floors of the house, and the bottom floor was from the perspective of somebody visiting. The front porch was like a little gift shoppy thing: Turk's head bracelets, belts, bell rope, some of the simpler stuff. Then you go into an entry parlor. There was a tugboat he had dressed like a mini steam powered tugboat. He had decorated and fendered up and everything.
Uh-huh.
And then through that room, you go in, you see a room full of fancy frames. He had a whole bunch of turquoise sample boards. He tied those 27 different bowlines on one board and a whole bunch of
Cool.
other stuff. And that's actually on display at the Custom House Museum. But in there were his picture frames. Then you go through the next room, you end up in his living room, where if I was hanging out and visiting my grandparents, I was tying bracelets and watching TV, and my grandmother was doing similar. And my grandfather's usually in either the side room tying picture frames, or he was at the card table working on smaller fancy pieces. And then the kitchen inside that room, and then off to the left was their bedroom. And I don't remember visiting on a warm day and not having some people coming into the house. It turns out, and I find out that my grandparents had people in the kitchen, 3 4 nights a week, all during the 60s and 70s, and just teaching knot tying to anybody who wanted to come in and learn. So he was teaching basically a community knot tying class just because he wanted to. I've met so many people through my workshop in downtown Mystic that learned how to tie knots. My grandfather, who just wandered into his house, and eventually they ended up at the kitchen table, you know, literally drinking Kool-Aid and tying knots and just hanging out and hearing crazy stories of my grandfather. And
Yeah.
but this isn't something I personally experienced. I've learned more stuff about my grandfather third hand through strangers than I ever knew myself.
Really.
So
That's interesting. But
I
then
had somebody.
but then he had you tying knots too all the time, right?
Well, yeah, well, I could do this at home. I mean, I'm literally not. I'm at the shop right now,
Yeah.
and knots are going. I've probably tied, I don't know, probably 80 Turk's heads since, I don't know, maybe 11 o'clock this morning.
Mm-hmm.
It's 3 o'clock now,
Um,
which is 3 minutes a piece cruising, which is actually that's about right for my normal. Just not trying to rush, just by goofing off.
yeah, yeah. Well, as it should be. Yeah, I think it takes me 10 minutes to tie one.
Okay. So it's tough. Once you get past the first 500,000 or so, they get faster.
I would hope. Yeah.
The guesstimate is I'm at around 1.2 million I've tied in my lifetime now.
Really.
Somewhere in that ballpark.
So basically people wandered in and he was like, yeah, I'll show you this. What do you want to learn? Or whatever
That's
is
kind
doing
of
it.
how the story is being sold to
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
People come in. I had to come in and see it because I know there used to be a knot shop over down the street years and years ago. I don't know if you ever heard of it. There was this guy who used to always had a pipe between his teeth, and he would, short guy. It's like, has a kind of a wry sense of humor, and always wanting to talk about boxing or yeah, him. That's my grandfather.
Boxing?
But he was a number 8 in the world flyweight boxer during the Depression era, also,
Really?
which is yeah,
So
which is kind of
what
funny.
weight class was that?
Feather or flyweight, I don't remember which one,
Yeah, yeah,
honestly.
yeah.
He fought under the name John Alton out of Ohio.
There's a picture that you have on your website of your granddad at a table with a display. Looks like a booth. There's a
Yep, that's
frame
from
here and a frame
57.
there. What was
Yep.
that?
That was the Mystic Art Show back in 57.
Okay.
What I find interesting about that picture is I apologize for bringing it up while we're talking, but if I remember right, it doesn't have a Turk's head bracelet on it. So
Huh.
we're known for the Turk's head bracelet,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
there it is. Okay. Yeah, 57 Mystic Art Show. Yeah, there's no Turk's heads to be found. I'm
Huh.
not quite sure why there's a Volvo emblem in the middle of the screen, but there's a wooden V there. I think it's. I remember the trophy. I don't remember what it was. I think my grandpa was joking it was a Volvo award, which, knowing him, that's complete BS. But
So now, so, so now, how many frames do you think he ever made in his
that's a hard
lifetime?
one. So if you think frames in 2 scales, like in the picture you're going to show,
Yeah.
the one on the left is actually the one that won the Mystic Art Show back in 57.
Okay.
No, take that back. Yeah, that won 57. The one on the right is at my cousin Brenda's house.
Okay.
But then if you look in the middle underneath the bell ropes, you'll see a small frame there. I have no idea how many of those made. He probably had 10 or 15 of them in the house at any given time.
Really?
And those are just doodles he used to sell.
Mm-hmm.
The thing to the bottom left is a coffee table, the anchor that's kind of poking out.
Okay.
That is, I know he's made at least a dozen of those.
Really?
And the one under my cousin's frame, all the they kind of look like bosun's chairs. I don't know what you call them, but they're double loop nuts and Bolins and sample board stuff. I've never seen those in real life. I
Okay.
have no idea how many or when he made those. So
Now the big frames, the ones that he made, you told me that he
Yep.
made the family promise never to sell them.
yeah, yep.
How
Those
big? One he made on a pool table. How big
So
is that?
the only one I've ever seen him make. He started. I was probably 3rd grade or so,
Mm-hmm.
give or take, when he started it, and he finished it during my sophomore year of college. That stood 8 foot tall, 6.5 foot wide,
Wow. Where
and
is it?
it's leaning up against the wall at my uncle's house.
Well, I mean, my big thing, the reason that I'm doing what we're doing right now
Yep.
is to preserve the historical heritage of the people behind knotting, because it doesn't kind of exist anywhere else. Now, there's some books here and there, but we're in a world today where at least a certain generation, people that are younger than I am, are sourcing their information and will to the future source their information from the internet.
Right.
So if nothing else, this is a digital representation of some historical stuff that you're not going to generally find anywhere else. today, you and I have already done it today, Googled something to try to find it out because you can write it at your fingertips. And, I mean, for instance, I mean, I was telling a buddy of mine the other day, I said, if you want to look up and see what I'm doing, just Google trivet. If you Google trivet knots, or if you Google Russian Senate, I have the only video in the world on how to tie Russian Senate.
Oh.
The only video. Now there are other, there's, I mean, Vince's site has a tutorial on it, and the BM3N2 for the Navy used to have it in there, and I think Lindsay has a description of it in one of his books as well. But that I've got the only video on how to, just because nobody else did it, and I want to show people how to do it. And I had just learned to do it. I do it a little different now than I did then, but just a few tweaks here and there.
Yep.
But I'm getting ready to tie some more for this frame that's coming up.
Well, that's one thing in our business is everything is procedurized and documented and in a format so we can keep consistency.
Yeah.
And if we come up with a slightly better way to do something, it's like an engineering revision notes system. It's like we have the whole thing goes through and everybody gets signed off and trained on the new way of doing something. So we keep consistency. That's why when you asked about who ties Turks, that's the same way I do. There's only one person I can't seem to cross train into this way because I had the wrong person teacher. But,
I'm with you. Yeah. I mean, because there's there are efficiencies to things. I mean, Skip and I tie differently. I mean, he keeps trying to get me. Everything I've learned on my own. Because I just live here by myself, and there's no other. Well, actually, there are some new knot tires. Well, not new. There's some knot tires I've become aware of that are in my area. I was talking to Jason Parsons, who's making some line for me right now. By the way, that's an interesting thing. The cottage industry of little guys here and there making hard laid line, and maybe 50-foot hanks. Because I mean, Miko in Europe, and Ed DeWitt, I think he's in Denmark. I think he's in Denmark. I could be wrong. Sorry to miscountry you if he's listening. Philip Lemercier down in Australia makes nice line. I bought some from Miko and from him. Jason Parsons is just started doing it, but he just sent me some flax line, really nice. And he's making some cotton line in 1 millimeter, 1.5 millimeter, and 2 millimeter right this moment. It should be on the way.
1 millimeter is pretty tight.
And
what's 1 millimeter in the numeral system? Is it like a 7?
I don't know. I'm not terribly adept at that. I know that 120 3-strand is 4.5 millimeter. 30 is 2.25. 15B is 1.9. And 12. I've got some 12. But I'm not sure. I think it's 1.5. So
I only go down as far as 9.
Yeah.
I have a 9 seine that we use as our whipping twine.
Yeah.
And that's about, ours is, I use mostly, well, this is in my hand is 60. Though, if you measure it by feet, I think I use more 18 than anything else. Measured by pounds, I use 108 more than anything else. Surprise, surprise, it's 9 times heavier.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
yeah, the cottage industry of people making line in their backyards or in their garages or porches or what have you is something that's up and coming, which is fine, but it doesn't solve any problems for me except for features. I need spools of 900 to 1,000 feet to make the volume I do in a frame. When I'm tying Senate, I'm doing 15 feet of sword mat that's 3 inches wide, that's a spool.
Right.
8 to 900 feet of line in one continuous,
And I'm only working 9 feet at a time, roughly.
Right.
But I buy 1,000 pounds at a time.
Right.
So, and 50-foot hanks, you start dividing it up, that's a lot of waste.
Sure. Yeah.
Just when you start scaling, my issue right now is my color cotton supplier. I'm running him. I am tying at 85% of his machine capacity, and I've offered to buy him a new machine to put next to the old machine. And he's not sure he wants me to do that.
Yeah.
Because it's like this is my business growth being topping out.
Yeah.
So what I've also done is I also bought some of those New England braider machines. I have two of those. I have a three station Sutash braiding machine and a bobbin winder, and I'm part of the what do they call it, Rope Makers Guild.
Okay.
And there's a guy Cam Hale and Mike Killian who are offering to teach me how to use these things. I just got to wait for reality and time to catch up with us because I now have
Mm-hmm.
machines sitting there. I've got two machines were built in the 1900s, like 1910. These
Really?
old black iron, they're really cool looking, and I'm so excited to look at them. Like, the bobbin winder thing it looks like a univac machine. It's about the same size as the my MG spray, my Sprite,
Really?
little sports
Oh my
car,
gosh.
and all it does is wind six bobbins at a time. But it's got a carriage auto feed, so you can just the thing is way overkill for what I'm going to be doing.
Really?
But I picked it up for $700, where a bobbin winder costs $4,000. So I have this
Wow.
monstrosity of a machine just to wind bobbins.
Yeah. But you get
Got to
pretty
get
good
that hooked
space
up.
there for storage and stuff, warehousing and all that, don't you?
I've got 2,000 square foot with 10-foot ceilings in my warehouse, and I've got two retail stores. One's 2,200 square feet, one's 600 square
So
feet.
I forgot that. You said you've got the one there right downtown,
I got two
or near the
downtown.
bridge, right? And then where's the other
Yeah.
one?
Well, so the main workshop's on Cottrell Street,
Okay.
and the wife said she wanted to shop closer to her parents' house. So if you go down the steps, turn a right, walk 600 feet, you get to my other shop. And then if you walk another 45 miles, you get to my in-laws. So it's closer. It's 600 feet closer.
Okay. Um, dude, I really would like to see one of those big frames.
The two in the shops are there. You know, you can walk right in and see them anytime you want.
Yeah. Now you took
The,
I think you took, they're glassed in, right? So
yeah, Jill took
hard to
those
take a
pictures.
really good picture. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I just put museum glass on the last frame for the picture,
Yep.
of the last frame I did. How to show you that. I'll send you a picture later. I'm
Cool.
going to deliver it this afternoon, probably. Take it down to Different News. So,
That's
but
the one thing I always regret. All these wacky projects, and don't have enough pictures of them. Little wedding things. Like right now downstairs, there's a 10-foot tall 5-pointed star done
really?
in conduit pipe in my garage right now. That's going to be part of a Christmas display in Rhode Island.
Huh.
And somehow we got voluntold to make the centerpiece of the whole show.
Voluntold.
Yep.
By whom?
By one of the local powerhouses. Lisa Kinnicky's the president of the Ocean Community Chamber of Commerce.
Uh-huh.
And she knows where I live, and she drove up with a van and said, "I need you to cover this."
Oh, and by the way, here's what you'll be doing.
But it's fun. You get all these fun projects. Like, we did a lobster pot tray,
Yeah.
and I ended up making some quick little braid that it's just what's it? I think it's only 3 parts Senate. I think it's just basic hair braid,
Mm-hmm.
two by. That was recessed into some mahogany to make the frame, and it was the largest lobster pot Christmas tree by volume last year, and it made it into the newspapers and the BBC. It made it worldwide. And you
Cool.
see the little braid I made, and every single lobster pot lobster buoy that was made into ornaments was just a strand of our rope with a quick figure 8 knot in the bottom of it. So, simple project, but 500 of them.
So, I mean, it's interesting because what you do is strictly commercial. I mean, really, it's your business.
It's artisan work. It's the argument I make is there's two kinds of creatives. There's artisans and there's artists.
Mm-hmm.
The artisan takes a skill and reproduces the same thing identically over and over again, and creating a reliable result that people can depend on and want. Your dining room tables or dining room chair is a typical example.
Mm-hmm.
Then the artist who will sculpt or tie or paint in a medium and create a piece of work, and the next one may look nothing like the first one. Right. You can see the autograph, you can see the technique of the person's work, and but each piece is unique and identical. Mm-hmm. Unique in and, special to the person. And that's what makes, what you and Skip do so much different than we do, is your piece, each one is a separate piece of art.
Yep.
I can also see why Skip, with his creative frames, got sick of lanyards, because lanyards are, there's a little more creativity, but it tends to be very commodity, very much.
Very much so. But he did, I think, 3 or 4 different um, styles, and based,
Yep.
how long it took him to make it, and how fancy it was, but he could produce them in a couple hours.
Yep.
Even a really fancy one, what he could do in very little time, and it had it very scientifically laid out as to the length of each line. He has a jig, which I think I'm going to do a video on. I just made one. That's a a line measuring thing. It's a piece of PVC, and you just take and spool it off. And if you need 6 feet, then you've done this 3 feet. So it winds around and around and around and around.
Okay.
And then when you get done, you have that number of lines that you need. You run a line of super glue across it, cut it in the middle, and then you have the full length.
That is so similar to what we do. I have a piece of PVC pipe, just a jig frame with a bunch of T-bolt T sticking out. And you set where you want them to be. You run the tape measure across, clamp off on the desk where you want it to be.
Yeah.
And then you can cut your string 6 at a time. Again, glue across, cut through the glue.
Yeah.
Hang them to dry, bundle them by 20s. They come out looking, well, these are short, but they come out looking like that.
Yeah.
And then we package those in packs of 80. They go home in totes. And we know that each tote represents 4 hours of work. Each finishing stage, it takes an hour to finish a tote of work, and everything is done in these weird units like that.
That's cool.
But you were mentioning, we talked before, that you took all of your senates and your braid work, and you actually have a chart and calculation of how long each piece is, or what their usage.
I'm trying to be meticulous about it. I'm really good on the mats, like the sailor's crosses and anything like a crinkle mat or what have you.
Yeah.
How much line, what line size, how long it is, and how many passes, that type of thing. I'm getting better with it. Well, I know that Skip for years has kept at least a 6-inch piece of every senet that he's made, and labeled, what size line, how many passes, the overs and unders, whatever, just as a reference, because when you're getting ready to do a frame and you're designing it, you can take this senet, that senet, and the other senet, lay them next to each other and say, does it look good? Doesn't look good? Whatever, before you ever make the wooden frame aspect of it, to know the width you needed to do it.
Okay.
So, that's a real benefit if you're looking to try to figure out what's going to look good and how wide it's going to be. I kind of know some of it in my head, like this. I just posted on Instagram the other day a 24 strand interlacing. And that's a funny story in and of itself. Charles Jordan was the guy who, we don't really know him, but he was an artist whose dad was in the Navy. And one day he saw a picture of a senet frame behind a bar in San Francisco. And just like when I first saw the picture of mine, he saw and said, I've got to make one of those. And he made them for years, from starting in the 1970s. Well, Charlie Bell, who recently passed, had discovered his work at a festival of some sort. He ran up on him and became friends with him. Well, Charlie was a self-proclaimed forger. He didn't ever make any original frame, but he could copy them better than the original person did them. He really could. Yeah. He was a highly skilled knot tyer and really wonderful maker of frames. Well, I have pictures of Charles Jordan's frames and pictures of Charlie's frames, and there was several senets on there that are unidentified. And this particular one, I looked at it, and I'd been looking at it and was like, I want to make that. So I asked Skip, and he's like, I don't know. And I asked a bunch of different people. They had no idea how to make it. And so I have a secret weapon. His name is Dave Warlow. And he's in Wales. We've become pretty good friends. And he's a guy who keeps himself to himself. He's a private guy. Doesn't want to, he doesn't want people pestering him. So, but knowing that, I sent a picture of this to him about a week ago. And he said, I got to pull up my practice ropes. And he was trying to find his line. And then he said, he sat down to do it, to try to figure it out, because I couldn't figure it out. And he said it tickled his memory, and he was like, wait a minute, because what made me think of this is he keeps meticulous records of everything he's
Mhm.
done. I mean, phenomenal. Beautiful pictures of the overs and unders, and a picture of the
Right.
Senate tide with the number of strands and everything. And he said, I think I've done this before. And he went back into his Google Drive and found it
Oh, wow.
and just sent me the picture. And I was like, you are the man. He's been my secret weapon. If I need something figured out, Mabel speaks very highly of him, and as does he her. They're both kind of genius on their own respective different things. But if you
Yeah.
need to know how a Senate is tied and you can't figure it out, Dave can figure it out. He's helped me with two different ones so far that I just couldn't get my mind wrapped around.
So you're talking about that. Those cited databases, the knowledge bases, those need to be recorded as much as the videos. Just, it's almost like the Grumman book. If you look at the Hensel book, whatever, however you want to call it, is it's really a catalog of what's been done.
Yeah.
It's really not. It's My grandfather used to refer to the Encyclopedia of Knots as it's an encyclopedia of knots. It's not a treatise on what knots are for. You almost have to know it's there to reproduce what's there.
Yeah.
You can't really use it as a
It's not a how-to.
right.
I mean,
It's a
some of it,
documentation source.
but I mean, throughout the book,
Yeah,
it refers to please tie this in their usual manner. Like, really?
right.
Yeah, thanks a lot. And Skip and I were talking the other day, and we wonder whether those two guys, was it, I think John Raoul Grammont and John Hensel were the
Yep.
names of the authors. I don't think they were knot tires. If they were in a rudimentary fashion, because whoever tied those senates, and I mean, I've looked through all the senates over and over and over and over
Yeah.
again, not very well tied, for one. Number
Mhm.
two, whoever the photographer was horrible, because
Yes.
it's a terrible representation of what's there.
Well,
And a
keep
lot
in
of it's
mind,
just
this
a
is,
picture.
think about when those photos were taken.
Yeah.
These, does it predate the encyclopedia?
1939. The book
Yeah,
was
so
published in 39.
it predates Ashley.
Yeah, by about 6 years. Yeah.
So,
5 years. Yeah.
and there wasn't really the treatise. There was an agricultural book from the 1800s where most everybody in the 60s and 70s copied their graphics out of.
Yeah.
But aside from that book, there wasn't really much to go by. And I think maybe the encyclopedia was designed to be like a coffee table book kind of thing, not actually intended. Like,
Maybe.
who the
Yeah.
hell is going to pick up this book and copy everything in it? It's one of those thoughts.
Yeah. Well, you were this is going back for a little earlier. We were talking about the book you had done, pictures being drawn.
Yeah.
You know who was really good at that? Was the Marlin Spike Sailor.
Yeah,
Um,
that's one of the few books on the shelf
that's
behind me right
a
here.
wonderful book. He
Mhm.
was quite the artist, but his drawings are as easy to look at. They're easier to look at than photos, as the
Yep.
way he has his stuff drawn. I mean, that's
Yep.
where I really learned how to do coach whipping, was from that. It shows it in a single line and says, okay, and then you do it with 3 or 4 instead of 1.
Right.
Yeah,
But
cool.
one thing I did want to make sure is in this is talk about my grandfather and how he influences the knot tying community. You brought that up, and I kind of walked through the Jeff Budgeworth letter and stuff like that. Where I consider my grandfather fit into knot tying community. This is kind of like a standalone piece. I consider Alton Bedoin and the knot tying community as kind of the bridge between the hand-to-hand skills. He brought the knowledge and the institutional memory from the 20s and the 30s and dragged it all the way up until the uh, the 2000s when he passed away. In fact, the day he died, there was a whole bunch of keychains he was tying on his bedside table, and he put the one piece down. It's actually still on his fit right now. I kept the piece he was working on when he passed away, on the fid with the needle still on it. So he passed away doing what he loved,
Mm.
but he brought the knowledge from the communities of picture the 1900 communities that he was learning from, all the way up through into 2000. Without the advantage of the books to teach him, without the advantage of all these things that we've come to be spoiled by, and created a whole raft of probably thousands of people who are interested in knots. And if you ask anybody, the old school people in the guild, they knew him, knew of him, or were taught by him, or taught by somebody who's taught by him. And up until the internet, that's you kind of fit into that, very small group of people who brought the skill forward from the ancient past into the present. And my uncle thinks he was the best knot tier who's ever lived. And to misquote my grandfather, forever is a long time, can't be true. But he did create a bridge for who I believe are the best knot tiers who ever lived. They're currently alive right now, because we've had the advantage. I'm not in that group. I'm a very rudimentary knot tier in volume, but I have people in this world that I know in this world who are far superior to my grandfather now, but had the advantage of building on the backs and the skills of, what my grandfather, what Des, what Jeff Budsworth, what Lindsay Philpott, what some of the other heroes of our Vince Brennan. Vince Brennan's one of the hallmark characters, brought forward from that past into what we have now, and it's blossoming as it's become in the cool geekery world that people are exploring through the internet and exploring through YouTube and challenging each other and getting better amongst themselves. And I think my grandfather would be so proud to see where the skill and where the talent's gone to. And I know he would be giving people hell for not quite doing it right, just to make them improve, not because they're not doing a good job. Same way he was razzed when he was a 20 something in the Merchant Marine.
When I saw the picture of that frame and I looked at those who had commented on it, the one by Daryl Inskeep, one of the people that had commented on his frame, praising it, was Pat Spearing. Pat Spearing is a medical doctor out in Wisconsin, and he had been a knot tier, I think, through Boy Scouts, and then he was an Air Force guy, and then when he has kids, he got back into Boy Scouts with his son and got back into knot tying. And I think he went to a guild meet and tracked down some people, and then he met Charlie Bell, and he started tying frames as well. And he's made some beautiful frames too. They're really, really nice work. And so anyway, he had commented, so I reached out to him, and he hit me up on a phone call through Facebook Messenger, right? And we talked for about 45 minutes. Well, he didn't talk a lot about how to help me make frames, which is kind of what I wanted, but he talked about what he was interested in, which then became my interest, was the history behind all this. I learned the name of Skip Hips and Vince Brennan because of, Frayed Knot Arts, Charlie Bell, Charles Jordan, Jesse Eves, George Kataxis, I think, who has a frame in the New York Yacht Club, and so on, others. And that his statement was that prior to the internet, the inception of the internet, people making Senate frames was a dead art.
Yes.
There were pictures of them, but no one was doing it. Now, we didn't know that Skip was, and that Jesse was, and that Charlie was, but that was all still pre-internet. They were still doing it. That's a very well, and I'll say Jeff Wyatt.
Okay.
He's made some beautiful frames, and his wife does pyrography, but I think he's sort of at least formally retired from making frames, but he made beautiful frames. And Bernard Cutbush. Bernard Cutbush had, oddly, the dust jacket of the Ashley Book of Knots, at least in the UK edition, but there's nothing in the at all in Ashley Book of Knots about frames. But he made beautiful frames, and he was a merchant seaman as well over in the UK. But I mean, it's a handful of people. It's just a handful of people that do it, or have ever done it. And I think that's probably true historically as well. We don't really know any particular history. No museum has ever taken notice of it.
Well, it's one of those arts that in the history of where we think knot tying doesn't belong. It's, knot tying was one of the 5 arts you would take on a ship with you to pass the time. When you're talking about the frame over your shoulders, what about 3x3 or so, 2.5x3?
That's it's 40 inches, or 46
Okay.
inches, 46 inches by 34 inches.
So, okay, even bigger than I thought. It's the scale on the screen, I don't know the depth, so that
Yeah, you can't
wouldn't
tell.
fit. That wouldn't fit on your rack. That wouldn't stow. You don't have space. So what you do
No.
is you tie really fine and fancy. The original shipboard macrame was old grain bags and tattered pieces of sail, and you take the weft out, leaving the warp fibers, and work for square knotting against the warp fibers. And it was closer to tatting or lace work than it was to rope work. And that's where the frame kind of mentality comes out of, is this extraordinary fine handkerchief-sized pieces that are just New Bedford Museum, Whaling Museum has some pieces. They're just unbelievably tight and tiny work.
Really?
It's like the finest lace work you'd ever imagine, like doilies.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
picture doilies out of thread,
Huh.
and you've taken what was done extremely tiny, like the lampshade over my shoulder, wherever
Yeah,
however this
yeah.
camera works.
That way, yeah.
That's out of basically one millimeter mini blind cord probably. That would be considered grossly big work for the 1900s, the early
Really?
1900s. I have a gentleman who I met his work through through a customer who dropped it off at my shop. I have this little pull for lampshades, for a window shade, roller
Mhm.
blind pull, and that rope is so tiny. It's out of silk, and it's ridiculously intricate. And I actually have his notes. I have graph paper notes from him from the 19 teens and 1920s
Yeah.
that I've had scanned. I haven't done anything with yet, but it's just the way things have moved. So the picture frame thing has always been a rare art. It's somebody who has the skill to tie fancy, the patience to tie big, but never existed. That still never existed on a ship.
Yeah.
They just wouldn't fit physically.
Well, and our suspicion from everyone I've talked to is that nobody made a frame on the ship. Basically,
Right.
they'd retire from the sea and show off one last time, or maybe get into
Exactly.
doing it as depending on how long they lived. But they ended up getting hung up over a mantle somewhere and got dirty, and the family didn't appreciate it, or did. It just got shuffled off to Buffalo, and who knows where it went.
Yeah.
And so there aren't too many around.
That's my big concern in the knot tying community is um, the next generation, not tires, families. It only takes one generation not appreciating what's there for it to not be considered. It ends up in a tag sale somewhere. It ends up, lost to the scuttle of history.
Yeah.
And you know, there's been talk with the guild about a knot museum. I think that's critical. I think it's
I think so
critical from the
too.
point of view that even if it's just where our deceased brethren, their families can send pieces to be put on display and to have a
Yeah.
memorial for that person, even
Yeah.
if that's the lowest it becomes. Highest use, it could be a teaching museum, it could be, you know, just a place, but it can't be a subset of a museum that might shut it off to a reserve collection and no one ever sees it again.
Yeah.
But it's got to be a mission of love somewhere that there's just too many good people putting too much good effort into making amazing pieces, and it bothers me to see. There's a thing up this way called Brimfield. It's a flea market thing in Massachusetts, and to see these exquisite pieces of macrame sitting there for $20. It's just somebody just flipped into somebody's tag sale pile. They don't even know what they're looking at. It's not work to your level. It's not, but it's a lot more than a $20 piece. This is
Yeah.
hours and hours and hours of effort, and it's got
Yeah.
stories in it, and it's just stuff like that bothers me. I know the effort it takes to make this stuff. I saw my grandfather take years on a frame, and I don't want that the skill lost, nor the history object itself disappear from people's ability to see it.
Yeah.
This is one of the reasons my store, it takes up a lot of room, but my grandfather's frames are on full display.
Yeah.
They're one of in the more visible store. It's the most prominent thing in the store, and it's not for sale in a
Right.
store.
Right.
It's like people need to understand this stuff. Hopefully, it inspires people to try it too.
Yeah.
So,
you're not too well. You're closer than I am. The New Bedford Whaling Museum.
it's an hour and a half.
Okay, you've been there.
Yeah.
I'm guessing.
Yep.
I understand there's a couple of frames in there.
Yes.
We know who made them?
I think Bob Dollar made the splicing sample display that's in in the place where the whaling longboat is.
Okay.
It's not a fancy frame like you're thinking of.
Okay.
The other frames, I'm not sure.
Yeah. See, I've never been there. I need to do this. My dad, I have a really extensive library of nautical books that I inherited from my dad, and other stuff that I bought as well, and his Ashleys, and his Marlin Spike sailor too.
Cool.
He was a knot tire, but more for functionality. I mean, this sail back here is the sail from our boat. He made that.
Oh wow.
Some of it hand tied, some of it, but all of that, the line on the edges there, and this is a Chinese lug rig sail,
Okay.
but all of the sheetlets and the edging there, the grommets, all hand tied.
Wow.
Yeah, he was good. He was good at everything he did. He was.
If you end up driving to New Bedford, kind of on the way, there's a Herreshoff Museum in Bristol.
Oh, really? I got to see that.
That shows hand tied sail grommets, and there's a whole bunch of exhibits. And if you ask nicely, they'll unlock the door where you're not supposed to go, and you can actually touch the exhibit inside as opposed to seeing it through the glass.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I'd love to see the Herreshoff. There's a really good. I just loaned my buddy Rich, The Boat Builders of Bristol.
Okay.
That book, wonderful biography of the Herreshoff family. And then L. Francis.
There's still a one design race in Newport every year.
Yeah.
Of their old 1920s era boats.
Yeah. Absolutely. Another buddy of mine, Rich Benet, has a Herreshoff boat. Maybe a 16-foot short keel.
Okay.
That's his lifetime project, getting that dressed up properly. He's a rigger. He knows how. That's what he does. I mean, he works on boats. Still climbing fairly tall rigs in his mid-50s. So,
wow.
Yeah, he's a badass.
Well, Matt Otto, who's the rigger for the Seaport, he's still up there, and he's my age, so he's in his mid-50s.
I need to get Matt on here.
Yes, you do. Totally different mindset than you and I.
Yeah.
He's he's rigged many a traditional rigged ship. He's invented different tools and approaches to knot tying that, from the point of view of hoisting sails and using the modern line, he works really closely with New England ropes, and he experiments with them with some stuff, and came up with their own, like Mystic Seaport has its own Mystic Blend rope that they use on their ships that New England makes, that Matt was instrumental in putting together the content to make it look and work right.
Cool.
Yeah, this has been good, John. I appreciate it.
I need to get up and see you at some point.
Sounds like a plan.
Yeah.
Doors open 7 days, so just fair warning, so I can make time for you. Definitely, show you some stuff around town. And
yeah, if I'm going to come up there, I'll definitely let you know way ahead of time. And I've got relatives in New York, so I might make a swing around through New York to Mystic and then back home, or the other direction.
Yep.
Make a circle.
If you've come all the way here, assuming you got your birds taken care of, we can make a day and see the shop, and we can pop up to New Bedford. I haven't been there in a few years either. So,
that'd be awesome. Yeah.
So.
All right. Well, we'll probably won't be this year, but after things get settled out, this is my first year of retirement. actually my first few months of retirement. But once things settle into place, then maybe I'll have a little more freedom and we can do that.
Sounds good.
All right.
All right, John.
I'll talk to you soon. Enjoyed it, man.
Thanks, man. Good
All
talking
right.
to you.
Bye.
All right. Bye-bye.
Well, I hope everybody enjoyed that. I had a good time having the conversation and look forward to having more conversations. So that's it for now. We'll see you again real soon. Maybe I'll do a tutorial or something. But we will see you then.